Thanks to the Asia Cruise Forum for the opportunity to participate in your conference. Washington State chose to establish public ports to ensure that elected representatives who are accountable to the people decide the best use of our economic development opportunities for sea and for airports. 100 years later, we still promote economic opportunities and quality of life in the region by advancing trade, travel, commerce, and job creation in an equitable, accountable, and environmentally responsible manner. Today, every single one of Washington State's key industries depends upon our services. The Port of Seattle was founded in 1911 as a special purpose government by the vote of the people of King County. The Port of Seattle is responsible for the operation of marine terminals, handling cargo, fishing vessels, cruise ships, and we operate the 8th largest airport in the United States, which is the main air traffic gateway for our state of Washington and our region. In 2019, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport was one of the busiest airports in the nation, with 30 different airlines serving 118 destinations. The passenger load factor was 47.4% in 2020, compared to almost 90% in 2019. The number of passengers traveling through Seattle and accessing car rentals, other forms of ground transportation, hotel lodging, and visitor attractions throughout our region reached over 50 million in 2019. Cruise visitor research reflects that 85% of cruise travelers fly to Seattle International Airport prior to and post their cruise experience to Alaska. Additionally, a large number of cruise guests who embark on an Alaska cruise from either Vancouver, British Columbia, or Anchorage, Alaska, also transit and utilize Seattle Airport as well to get to their destination. Seattle International Airport is an important facet of the Alaska cruise trade. Over the past 20 years, the Port of Seattle has become the largest embarkation port for cruises to and from Alaska, surpassing all other ports on the West Coast. In 2019, Washington State experienced 650,000 cruise guests boarding in Seattle for an Alaska cruise, and those same 650,000 guests disembarking, because cruises from Seattle to Alaska are virtually all round trip. That represented a potential of 1.3 million visitor guest engagements for our region. A substantial number of those guests spend additional time in the area of Seattle and Washington State before or after their Alaska cruise experience. The loss of this industry was felt by businesses all around the state. Each time a cruise ship arrives, the dock is piled high with week's groceries, pallets loaded with local eggs, vegetables, meat, seafood, and apples. In addition, maritime supplies of fuel and lubricants for all the ship's moving parts means that equates to $4.2 million every time a ship docks. Our 2019 Port of Seattle cruise survey reflects that 73% of Alaska cruise passengers overnight in the area before or after their cruise, which also impacts the travel industry as well. The economic impact on our state is almost $900 million annually. The loss of the 2020 season also crippled tourism, not just in Washington, but all of Alaska as well. Realizing that we, as the main gateway of air travel, realizing that we, as the main gateway of travel for air and cruise visitors, began initiation of steps to improve the safety and health protocols at both Seattle International Airport and our cruise terminals, with our cruise line partners and with our visitor industry stakeholders. We have also been very diligent working with government officials to ensure that precautions have been implemented at our 3 terminals in Seattle for embarkation and disembarkation processes, including working with the Center for Disease Control, or CDC, and state and public health officials. So where are we now? We will continue to deliver the message that substantial precautionary strategies have been implemented to minimize the potential of contracting COVID-19 while transiting Seattle and/or taking an Alaska cruise. The Port of Seattle has implemented protocols to maintain the health, safety, and well-being of travelers and community members who utilize Seattle-Tacoma International Airport and our cruise terminals. Just one example of an additional strategies, the port has installed over 250 hand sanitizers in and around the airport terminal. Even though we are far below the count of air travelers, we are experiencing gradual increases, and we will have an abbreviated cruise season in 2021. Presently, virtually no international leisure traffic is occurring in Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. The vast majority of air traffic is domestic U.S. residents. As the pandemic resides, we fully anticipate and expect that the important offshore international leisure cruise markets of the UK, Ireland, mainland Europe, and Australia will continue to be important markets for us to impact and positively influence. We expect that approximately almost 50 million people will utilize Seattle-Tacoma International Airport in 2022. Implementation milestones. The Port of Seattle would not be at this point without the support of many, including our Washington State and Alaska State congressional delegation, who worked very closely and in a collaborative fashion to pass the Alaska Tourism Recovery Act, which made this season possible, allowing for an elimination of the required international port of call stop in Canada. In previous years, all Seattle cruises were required to stop in Victoria or Vancouver, British Columbia. For this shortened season of 2021, that stop has been eliminated because of the Alaska Tourism Recovery Act. We are very grateful for their support and to President Biden for signing this bill. All of our cruise partners have returned for 2021, and one additional home port line, Silver Sea, has been added. The cruise lines have all stated that the demand for Alaska cruises remains very strong. As mentioned earlier, cruise passengers are originating from North America. They are not international offshore travelers. This year, most cruise lines will bring just one vessel to Seattle for the abbreviated Alaska cruise season. This graph reflects the 20-year growth of the industry in Seattle by the number of ship calls. And as you can see, there was absolutely no season at all in 2020. And the abbreviated season for this year, for 2021, will be about 84 calls. The cruise season for this year was initiated in July and will run through early October. We anticipate that in 2022, we will have somewhere in the vicinity of 220 projected ship calls again. As this abbreviated season has been initiated, the Port of Seattle has and will continue to take specific actions to work with our industry partners, both the cruise lines and our tourism and travel partners, to ensure that the cruise industry, in terms of passenger satisfaction, passenger experiences, and future growth, is strong. For this shortened season, our marketing and communications priorities have been set to be in strong collaboration, communication, and engagement with our local tourism and destination management partners. We are working to make sure that hotels, attractions, retailers, and the many businesses that serve the cruise sector have the information they need to welcome visitors back and get back to the business of putting people to work. We have created a web page for business, tourism, and community partners that includes ship schedules that are posted for this year. Presently, at various destination marketing organization events, we're communicating to hotels and the leisure travel industry stakeholders about and how this season will progress. On June 29th, we hosted a Port of Seattle webinar that talked about when and how the cruise season will happen and the healthy protocols and safety procedures that will be implemented. We will continue to stay in close contact with statewide groups such as the Washington Tourism Alliance and the Washington Hospitality Association, as well as local destination management organizations, keeping in close communication with them and working diligently to ensure good cruise passenger experiences. Another example of expanded marketing communications is that we have created a Cruise Healthy Wedge page on the Port of Seattle website to help answer questions that people may have about what to expect this season. We'll also launch a quarterly newsletter called Peer to Peer, aimed at our waterfront and tourism stakeholder community. This expanded communication is an addition to the day-to-day contacts we make on our team in tourism and external relations. International marketing efforts. Even though international travel restrictions have completely curbed international cruise travel to Seattle and the Alaska cruise trade, based on the cruise demand and the fact that international purchase decisions for cruises are made much longer, as long as 6 to 18 months out, the port has made the marketing decision to continue to reach out and impact the identified important international offshore cruise markets of the UK, Ireland, mainland Europe, and Australia. The Port of Seattle has marketing and communications representation firms in those 3 regions. But obviously, due to the pandemic, we have had to change, rethink, modify, and be creative with respect to our efforts internationally. Following are some specific marketing communications actions that we have implemented in order to continue to impact these important cruise markets for Seattle and for Alaska. As travel trade shows and conferences have been eliminated and or gone virtual, we have still been very active in communicating and reaching out to the travel trade and travel media, relaying unique Washington experiences, attractions, and telling the wonderful stories about Washington State. In an effort to tell those unique stories about the Pacific Northwest, we have utilized over 50 various communications activities, including press releases, newsletters, webinars, videos, and developing unique itineraries that we've communicated to the travel trade. Now, these have all been used to tell the story and deliver the message that combining a pre and post Washington State vacation experience are great options and are readily accessible before or after an Alaska cruise from Seattle. One unique experiment is that we, in December of 2020 this year, one unique experience that we attempted to do and was very successful in December of 2020, and in concert with the United States Commercial Service in the UK and ourselves, the Port of Seattle, we worked collaboratively to develop a very well-received webinar presentation that detailed information about the newly constructed Seattle International Arrivals Facility, the Alaska Cruise itinerary information, and the unique pre and post experiences available to travelers when coming to Washington State. Almost 200 European travel sellers and travel media participated in this first ever collaborative event sponsored and in conjunction with the U.S. Commercial Service. Because the Cruise Line International Association, or CLIA, has solid representation in Europe and Australia, our marketing and communications firms have worked closely with CLIA to implement programs and engage with the travel trade, utilizing CLIA's database of retailers and contacts to again tell the Washington State leisure travel stories, as well as focus on why initiating a cruise to Alaska will allow for great holiday experiences in Washington State and in Alaska. Over the past 18 months, we have utilized newsletters, email blasts, and training programs certifying that retailers are knowledgeable about Washington and Alaska cruising. Our intent is to impact those 8,500 travel trade members of CLIA in the UK and Australia in a positive manner. Again, because of continued international travel restrictions, we are currently in the midst of developing a virtual familiarization tour that will initially be made available to the Australian travel trade, promoting Washington State as a great holiday experience. This is, again, an effort to generate interest, excitement, and awareness of the unique travel experiences, attractions, and stories available to potential international travelers interested in coming to the United States. If deemed successful, we will consider a similar implementation in UK, Ireland later in the year. As we move forward, I believe that the Alaska cruise trade will come back in resounding fashion, and that some of the health and safety protocols will improve the cruise traveler experience and reception of traveling. And when international travel is allowed in and by 2022 and beyond, the markets that we have focused our efforts on will be just as strong or stronger than they have been in the past. Once again, thank you for this opportunity, and I will be available for questions or comments after the presentations are finished.